Still have a lot to talk about women's basketball, and with that, we bring in the women's basketball analysis and the color commentator for the women's basketball team, Kevin Calhoun. Kevin, how was the holidays?
Holidays were good. It was good to get home, but it's good to be back.
I'm glad to have you back, and we do want to talk about some women's basketball. Over the break when they had those two games in Florida against very good basketball teams, Indiana Wesleyan and Cedarville, one game they played hard. I'm not saying they didn't play hard in either of those games, but one game they really stuck it out there and they lost by 5. But against the Cedarville team, that's an AMC conference foe, they didn't play that well against them and lost by double digits.
Yeah, and you know what? Cedarville's a team that you can't take anything away from. Cedarville, always the class of the AMC conference. Mm-hmm. They sit atop the conference again now. And but you know what? I think that was a great tune-up game for the Pioneers going into what is really the core of their schedule in the AMC conference.
And as the basketball rankings came out, Cedarville was actually bumped up to 8th in Division II NAIA. Shawnee State bumped up to 4th in Division II NAIA, so a very, very tough AMC conference. Want to keep it up here now. Let's talk about the conference ahead for them, starting with tonight's game against the Razors of Northwestern Ohio. Good team, 10-4 overall. It's going to be some trouble, and the big game was last year with this team against Northwestern Ohio.
Oh, yeah, Northwestern Ohio, always a good opponent for the Pioneers, and Northwestern Ohio had a big game. Damon, not the same Damon team that we've seen of recent years, but they're still a good basketball team, and Northwestern Ohio went up to New York and beat a very good basketball team in Damon. So I'll be interested to see how the Pioneers really handle a team like Northwestern Ohio. I want to see the Pioneers really work the ball to the inside more, Josh. They've been really physical the last few games they've played.
And as we're going to bring up the schedule here, the big key thing that you said in that whole Northwestern Ohio there was they went to Damon to beat Damon.
It's a tough place to play.
If you beat Damon at home. It's a whole other thing if you go up to Amherst, New York, and knock off the Wildcats. But that's Tuesday, a game that can be won by the Pioneers. January 14th at Malone, 5:30. January 16th at home against Notre Dame at 2 p.m. And then the make-up date from 2 games ago that was postponed, January 18th against Roberts Wesleyan, 5:30. All those, 670 WPBJ and the MSAsports.net. What I want to get to here is, this team is still 3-0 in the AMC conference.
Yes,
I think that's one thing that's really taken a back seat because they haven't played an AMC game since Carlo way back in the day. I don't even remember what I had for lunch yesterday, whether or not the Pioneers beat Carlo a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we have to state, that this team is undefeated in the AMC conference, still in first place in the AMC conference and with some winnable games. Let's talk about Malone right now.
Okay, when you talk about Malone's sitting at 1-5 in the conference, and I see this game a very winnable game for the Pioneers. And you got to remember that one win is against Wilberforce, definitely not the class of the AMC conference.
Right.
So you know what? When you look at the Pioneers' upcoming schedule, you have Northwestern Ohio, a tough game. You have Malone, Notre Dame, and Roberts Wesleyan. I think 2, 3, maybe all 4 of those games are winnable for this Pioneer ball club.
April Austin, 16.5 points per game. Brittany Wilson, 11.5. Ashley Henderson, just under 10 at 9.8. Now, tell me what can happen here if the Pioneers get a big win going to the other side of Toledo. This is a very long road trip for the Pioneers. They go to the other side of Toledo, beat Northwestern Ohio, and what can happen with that games against going to Malone, a very, very winnable game. Home against Notre Dame, another winnable game, and then home against Roberts Wesleyan. All these games, they can end up being 7-0 in the AMC conference.
Oh, they definitely can. And when you talk about this long road trip, I think the Pioneers really are going to take advantage of the fact that they didn't have to go to Shawnee State. The snow out at Shawnee State is a huge thing for this Pioneer team. They had 3 road games scheduled for this week. Instead, they're only going to have 2. And I think that's going to really help the overall health of this team, and they're going to be well rested going into this ballgame.
Finally, what are your predictions here for these next 4 games? When we come back next week, are we going to say the Pioneers are 7-0 in the conference, or are we going to say they slid a little bit and dropped down?
I say the Pioneers, they'll be 6-1 or 7-0 in the AMC conference when we come back.
So if they do go 6-1, who's the one loss to?
The one loss is at Northwestern Ohio. They're going to win the next 3 games regardless afterwards.